Alright, y'all people, back at the lab. I just want to give out a short warning for viewer discretion advised, because this is one of those topics that you're going to find some resonance with because you may have seen this before. And all of the different pictures and things that I'll be showing you, you will finally get a chance to realize that interterrestrial, inside aliens, are definitely in existence in this day and has been for a very, very, very long time. So you need to remember that they depend on you as a host in order to live. So they depend on your energy. So where are they hiding? They're hiding around inside of your duodenum, right there inside of the GI tract, where they can wait on the food to come out first. So they like to absorb it before you get a chance to digest it. So that means these parasites are actually taken away from your nutritional source every single day. So most of them you will find that they cause diarrhea, they cause symptoms of gastroenteritis, bloating, cramping, severe nausea, and things like that. But there are really a lot of millions of people are affected with this type of condition, parasitic conditions. And like I said before, that this about 99% of us are. So think about it. Everyone that stays near the equator, where it's very hot tropical areas, they definitely would have most of these type of infections. And you may say that I don't have these type of infections, but I am 95% sure that if you eat meat, you definitely have some type of infection. So let me go over the things that I've actually organized here so that you won't take the time out to spell all these big old words. Get a chance to pause the video now. I wrote up a couple of little things to make you go along with this. And also you'll be able to take a look at the picture. So first thing I want to go over is liver flukes. Now, liver flukes are pretty common. I wrote down the top 3 here. They like to find their way to the liver. So the first one we'll go over is Echinococcus. Echinococcus basically comes from eating raw lamb meat. Now, a lot of us don't eat lamb meat, but you would never think this, but our dogs, if you have pets in your house and they eat dog food, they definitely are eating raw lamb meat. Echinococcus couldn't see it because it's very, very microscopic, invisible to the eye. So when your dog gets diarrhea, you go to clean up the poop outside. Maybe your community does not allow the dog to just poop outside in the grass. You reach to clean it up, and there you can be infected with the Echinococcus microscopic fluke. And they like to find their way to the liver, and they start to make little cysts right there. So that's how you get liver cysts from Echinococcus. Now, the next one we call schistosomiasis. Let me say it again, it's called schistosomiasis. And this is for our nature walkers out there, especially someone like me, going outside at the beach or going near a river, especially by the swamps and the rivers and things like that. Maybe you like to hike near rivers and mountains and things like I do. But you take your shoes off and you could get a cut from a snail shell or a rock or something like that. You want to cross over the river rocks and things. You can get penetrated by a microscopic parasite called schistosomiasis. So you want to say barefooted, just walking barefooted, and this will travel in the dermis of the skin and find its way through the bloodstream and then find its way to the liver. So this is how schistosomiasis likes to live inside of the liver. So we will say it finds it basically through the lymphatic system or blood system or bloodstream. This is how it travels. Our next one is Trichuris. Last year, I put out a little YouTube video about me being contaminated from cat litter, or basically if you are around someone that has a cat or a dog, maybe they have had diarrhea, in which this really happens. This comes from a cat or a dog, because the cat or the dog either gets it from other dogs or other cats, or something like a rodent would have this and transfer it to the cat or the dog. But the way we would get it is that the dog or cat has diarrhea, And you can actually see this as you're going to clean it up. It will come through your hands, through your fingers, and you can see the parasitic worms that will be shown with Trichuris. And it likes to travel through the lymphatic system as well. So that's all about our main 3 liver flukes. Now next, I really want to dig into our hookworms. I know you've heard of this because you know that hookworms like to burrow or dig their hooks. I call them little vampire fangs, but really they're called microtubules. And they like to cause, diarrhea, you cause a prolapse colon, they cause severe cramps and things like that, abdominal pain, and they can cause vomiting. So the first one is the most common one in the United States, period. Just from walking barefoot. We would say walking barefoot through contaminated soil, and it's very microscopic. It's invisible to the eye. This Necator is from a dog or maybe a human, or someone has defecated in the soil, maybe a horse, maybe a cow, and you're walking out there barefooted. And this is more like a fecal soil skin transmission, how this happened. So it penetrates the dermis layer of your foot and it enters the lymphatic system. So it likes to make its way all the way to the heart. This is where actually it's being matured and starting to, you heard of heartworms or things like that. But at this period, this is only just a larvae, a very small little worm. And it gets pumped out of the pulmonary artery of the heart and goes to the lung. This is where they mature and become at least about 1 centimeter. So Necator is then being matured in the lungs. As you're eating your food, you have to cough. And you'll get this feeling because Necator releases an immune response. It releases immune response that causes you to cough, and then the worm can actually come up the trachea and then enter the esophagus, because you swallow it back down and now it's in the stomach and the GI tract, and that's where it lives. Male meets female, they have sex, and they create more eggs, and they can have up to about 20,000 eggs per day, and they can live up to about 5 years, completing this cycle on and on and on. Now this is the most common. If somebody ever asks you what's the most common parasitic worm that is contaminating the United States, you would say Necator. Our next one is Ascaris lumbricoides. I spoke about this just previously because our 2 and 3 years olds, we go outside and play in the dirt and things like that. And there are also, earthworms, roundworms. That's another name for Ascaris lumbricoides. This is just like our earthworm, and that's how big they can get. They can get up to about 10 inches long. So look at your 10-inch shoe, and you'll be able to tell how long this worm would be. You can see actually pictures of this. Matter of fact, let me show you one so that you can see what our roundworm looks like inside of the gut. Now, the Ascaris lumbricoides, they find their way through the dirt. They come as a larvae. When we swallow these little eggs, our digestive juice start to activate them, and then they hatch inside of our small intestines. But see, they like to burrow and dig their way out of the GI tract. So they find their way through the bloodstream, then goes to the heart. The heart then pumps them out into the lungs, and the same old cycle goes up where they can cough them up and then back into the esophagus. And this is how this worm continues its cycle as well. About 1 out of 4 people are actually infected with the Ascaris lumbricoides. The unsightly infection that you would see with this is when this worm likes to chase the food out of your mouth. Another symptoms that you may feel if it's a heavy infection is that you'll have bowel blockage. Now, people that have colon cancer will have many of these, and it can be about 800 of these if the person is overweight, obese. big handfuls of these Ascaris lumbricoides. Very unsightly scene to see, because we know that we are fostering their growth by not, they're actually changing the cravings of what you want to eat. It continue on the same old cycle. This is a big issue. This is most second common thing that you would see in the United States, mainly in Mexico. Maybe if you type in Ascaris lumbricoides and surgeries, you'll see a lot of this happening in Mexico, a lot in the African population near the equator, and this is what you would see. The next one, Enterobius vermicularis. Now, big word, but we know this as pinworms. Know this as pinworms. And we know what these like to hide at. They like to hide at inside of the cecum or near the colon. Now, the person would get a colonoscopy and the doctor will stick the tube or the camera to see if you're clear. But that tube is only about 3 feet long, people. So your colon is 5 feet. So they never get a chance to see where the duodenum meets the cecum, where the worms are actually hiding at. So these are the little 1 millimeter slash, very microscopic pinworms that you see that a person would have. The same thing kind of happens, the cycle of this infection. Someone is contaminated by the food that they're eating. Maybe the child that eats contaminated food, or it scratches his anus. This is a very common thing with the pinworms. Is the child will scratch his anus because what happens, this worm likes to lay its eggs near the anus. So it causes this oozing microscopic fluid that right there that makes the itchy butt that child would experience. Now, pinworms is very common when you see a child going to preschool, maybe 3, 4, 5 years old, and they touching doorknobs, they're playing with their toys, they're scratching their anus, and they would call this parasitis ani. And this is how they transfer it. They transfer it to kids with the toys. They're putting things in their mouth. So this is, as we know, as Enterobius vermicularis, or pinworms. Our next one, Trichuris trichiura. Now, another nickname for this, we would call this our whipworm. Their life cycle is kind of similar to the pinworms. The reason its nickname is the whipworm because they like to hide out near the cecum also. It almost, because it look like a bullwhip. That's the way it looks. So you can take a look at this picture, see where it likes to hide at, and it keeps the rest of this worm, the rest of its body inside of the small intestines, while the head of it is inside of the colon. This is the area where the person would feel like he always had to have a bowel movement. And really, he could push this worm out, but that's the reason why they call it the whipworm, because once you try to push it out, it can actually whip around, and you will feel this, and you will see this in your stool, and this is how you will know you will have the whipworm, Trichuris. This worm is kind of dangerous because a lot of these worms can cause, because they're sucking. With their little microtubules, they're sucking on the bowel wall, they're sucking on the intestinal tract, and they take about 0.005 milliliters of blood every single day. If you have a bunch of these, like more than 800 of these, then they're going to cause some anemia. Going to cause anemia, and they also can cause inflammatory bowel diseases. We know this as like Crohn's disease. How do you spell Crohn's? Crohn's disease. We know this as irritable bowel syndrome, IBS. gastroenteritis. There's so many different ones that this worm can become very aggressive at. So we get this from maybe contaminated food, and they're right up under, they can get stuck up under the fingernails because they're microscopic, contaminated food, and then, you know, once they hatch through the small intestines, and they keep on with this life cycle. Okay, next we have our, what we call flatworms. Flatworms are sometimes called our tapeworm. They take up a lot of room actually inside of our gut. They are connecting protelids and can be up to meters and meters long inside of our gut and intestinal tract. Now, our first one we will talk about is TAENIA saginatum. Now, so TAENIA saginatum can cause a lot of gastroenteritis. This is caused by eating undercooked beef. I want to show some pictures of how to recognize what to look for when you're buying beef, because they create little cysts on the beef, and each cyst is like the head of a worm. So we're going to say that they are started by little cysts. And eating raw or undercooked beef. TAENIA saginatum can cause these worms to hatch inside of the digestive juices of your stomach, and they find their way into the gastrointestinal tract, and this is where they hook on, and you won't feel it at all. It's just that they're hooking on to your GI tract, holding on for life, because they like to stay right there. You won't see these come out of your stool. You have to just kill them off and let them absorb each other, because they basically are decomposers. Inside of that little cyst of raw beef, because it has went through rigor mortis already, these cysts come out, leave their head right there at the top of the meat, and the rest of his body inside of the meat. They used to use this thing because it can cause anorexia. You used to use this thing as a weight control, people. It's crazy. It can cause anorexia. So back in the 1920s, you may find some articles, because I've done my studies, you may find some articles that they use this as calling sanitized tapeworms. They use this to help people lose weight, which is a very unhealthy thing, because they're going to go all the way to anorexia. And they try to kill the worm off using pharmaceutical drugs like malbendazole. But we're going to talk about mostly herbal ways to cleanse these things. But that was their weight control method. They found out about this parasite and the cyst inside of the beef. So it can become very, very large, people. So when I said meters long, I want you to know that it's adding protelids, and adding protelids. We have 120 feet long small intestine, our GI tract, and it can get up to about 2 meters long inside of the body, 3 meters long inside of the body. That's around about, 90 something inches, so that's really big. Also, we have the TAENIA SOLIUM. TAENIA SOLIUM comes from eating undercooked pork or raw pork. Pork, we already know that's not a good thing to eat at all. Porks eat fish, pig flesh. Pig flesh has a lot of different worms inside of it, and this is one of the main ones that you would get, because they also come with different cysts on top of it, and they are named like a larvae called cystosarcosis. These larvae can travel through the bloodstream and end up anywhere inside of the body, which is not a good thing, because people will complain. I've heard of plenty of clinical studies where you would see a dot or floater call across your eyes, and that's simply just a worm. Once you look at this picture, and for your reference, they have 2 cycles. They can either come out through your stool, or they can come out or die in the cerebral cortex of your brain. This is where they will simply leave a plaque on your brain in certain areas, And this is basically the cortex. And people can become demented by this plaque because these are like neurotoxins after they die, and they're right there on top of your brain. And they cause a little bit of Hexamer's syndrome once these things are dying. But you don't want to eat the raw pork. Very, very nasty animal. You don't want to create any type of blurriness or stigmatisms or floaters in your eyes by having this worm inside of your body. The next one is called diflurium. I might have said that wrong, but dilatum is what we call it. This comes from eating raw fish. People that like their sushi, people that like their salmon and hors d'oeuvres and all those different type of fish. They are these little tiny little bitty worms that could eat up all of your B12. This is known and notorious for eating B12 or causing a B12 deficiency in a lot of people because they want to continue to eat raw fish and things like that. But they definitely specifically goes for the B12. They can live up to about 4 years, 5 years inside of the body, continue on the cycle as they mature and become more and more aggressive inside of the body. One of them that I did not write down, I want to add this in because you've seen this in real life, and it's a very unsightly infection that you will see. It's called filariasis. Actually comes from a mosquito. Actually is infected with this little microscopic worm called microfilariasis, and it eats up on the bacteria of the mosquito inside of its gut, and then when it bites someone and it enters the lymphatic system, where it can cause this disease called elephantiasis. Elephantiasis. I'm going to spell this up here for you because you're going to see this. Matter of fact, let me show you a picture so that you can get a better idea of it. That not only just happens in the legs, not only happens in the arms, or it can happen in the prostate, it can happen in the breast, but when it happens in the bladder and getting into the prostate and all those things, they got a condition called chyluria, where it can cause your urine to look like milk. Very unsightly. So that's the end of our talk on parasites, because this is just mainly our top 10 right now in all different 3 categories. I found out some more things about protozoas and all those different things, but I try to keep these lectures down to 30 minutes so I don't bore you out and you can continue on your research. And oh, one other thing, I need to let you know about this cardiotoxin. It's a cardiotoxicant that's called TMAO. That's trimethylamine oxide, and it's made and produced inside of our intestinal bacteria. Some of us make it, well, 70% of Americans do make it because they all eat meat. Now, if we don't have this meat producing bacteria inside of our body, then our ecosystem is basically a plant-based ecosystem. So this is made from dietary choices and from eggs and eating meat. You create this thing. And I always ask people in my lectures to know, you should know that the #1 cause of death in the world is heart disease. So a person, when they get high blood pressure, and don't know where it's coming from, maybe because you're having so much of this bacteria that you're creating that's going all over your system inside of your gut, called TMAO. If you're creating it, then you're going to have these type of conditions. So let's go over some things about what's going to heal or get rid of the parasites. Now we know that black walnut is one of the very common things that kill off parasites. We can use that. We also know that it is a laxative, and it basically kills off whipworms, roundworms, pinworms. You also want to use stuff like wormwood. Very common, powerful dewormer, even for your cat, even for your dog or yourself. You want to use this ingredient called wormwood. Also use clove. Clove from the clove tree helps remove the eggs, because you just don't want to clear off all of the worms and not clear off the eggs. So you want to use this 3 combination. You can buy the Shalom Health Services parasite cleanse, and it has multiple different herbs, but these are my 3 chief ingredients that you would use to get rid of these type of larvae and worms, helminths, and eggs. So this could be used as a little single treatment every 3 months if you want to use it, but also incorporate garlic, because it can change the microbiome, the microflora inside of your gut. It is very, very selective and goes towards the bad bacteria and allows that to exit the GI tract. So garlic is a very good herb to use for parasites. So also use coconut oil. Coconut oil is antifungal, antibacterial, antiviral as well. So it is able to activate immune responses, immune cells, to elevate the antibacterial properties that are inside of the body. And it's also monosaturated fats to help build up more of our protective properties inside of our body. This is mainly our talk on parasites. I'm glad you guys are able to view this tutorial. Some of our students are here and new. I'm glad that you now become aware of this, and we can now modify our terrain, our ecosystem. So I want to thank you guys for coming. Thank you guys for listening. Until next time, job blessings.